Imagine waking up tomorrow in Canada and 2.4 million people just lost their jobs. That's 2.4 million families that lost income, that can't pay for their mortgages or their bills, that can't put food on the table, and certainly can't save for a better future for themselves or their families. Well, you won't have to imagine this for very long, because Justin Trudeau and his gang of Liberals are planning for a future for Canada with 2.4 million less jobs. And they call it a just transition.
We can't shut down the oil sands tomorrow. We need to phase them out. We need to manage the transition off of our dependence.
I want to talk about this today, so please take a couple minutes to sit down and watch this video. Because as someone who came from a part of the country that went through the very first wave of the just transition, I want to tell you about the impact it had on my communities. I live in a town called Stony Plain, which is right in the middle of Parkland County, Alberta, which was home to some of Canada's largest coal-fired power plants. The power plants and the coal mines that fed them employed my neighbors. In fact, local farmers who couldn't make enough on the harvest in that year would pick up extra shifts at the coal plants just to keep the family farm going. Right after the 2015 provincial election in Alberta, the NDP took power, and they launched their plan with the support of the federal Liberal Party to accelerate the phase-out of Alberta's coal sector. The result of this policy has been tremendously painful for my community. People lost their jobs, and at the time, our oil and gas sector wasn't doing that well either, so there weren't the replacement jobs that people could count on to make up for their lost income. Now, the government had this so-called just transition policy, which pledged to make everything right for these workers in their communities. And part of their plan was to help pay people to retrain them for new jobs outside of the power sector. The problem is that the jobs that they were training these people to do often paid less than half of what they were getting paid from the jobs that they lost. They weren't paying the same benefits, they weren't union jobs, they were jobs where people couldn't sustain their families and couldn't even live in their communities anymore. That doesn't sound very just to me. Now, what about the older workers, those people who've been putting in years at the plant and years in the mine, who are in their late 50s, early 60s? They weren't ready to retire yet, but they could see it on the horizon. What happened to them? Well, they got a little bit of a bridge benefit, but the fact is it didn't go anywhere near replacing the amount of income that they would have made if they had just been able to hold their job for a few more years so that they could reach retirement. The result? These people who were retiring soon lost their jobs early, and the amount of income that they got to replace that lost income didn't go anywhere near providing them with the same standard of living that they could have expected in retirement if they had just been able to work for a few more years. This is the part about government policy that I hate the most. You have some downtown bureaucrats deciding who gets to be a winner and who gets to be a loser. And in the case of my community, it was coal workers and their families that were the losers. All because some downtown bureaucrats wanted to appease environmental lobbyists. Another part of this just transition, powerful corporations received billions of taxpayer dollars to compensate them for the early phase-out of their investments. Not the workers and not the communities, the corporations got billions of tax dollars while communities and workers were left behind. And to make matters worse, the companies then lowered the value of their assets so that they would have to pay less property taxes to the communities that they operated in. So now the families who were living in those communities had to pay higher property taxes at the same time as they were losing jobs and seeing a major employer leave their community. I'll say it again, that's not just. The coal phase-out in my community is in the past. It still hurts, but it happened years ago. Today I want to talk about a second wave that's coming. It's the government's plan to expand on the just transition that they imposed on my communities. It's a so-called just transition that won't just impact the coal sector, but will impact the oil and gas sector, the transportation sector. These sectors employ millions of Canadians and support millions of families and provide tax revenue that supports our schools and our hospitals. Now, the Liberals, in their own documents, are acknowledging that this just transition could potentially cost 2.4 million Canadians jobs. Now let that sink in. The Liberals have a plan to destroy the jobs of up to 2.4 million Canadians. I can't think of another government in the history of this country that has ever had a plan to destroy so many jobs. And the fact is, they're proud of it. Every percentage point that unemployment goes up in this country, it means that families can't pay their mortgages. People lose their homes, families break up, dreams are destroyed. And all this is for what? So liberals can hop on their private jets and travel to international conferences to pat each other on the back with the rest of the global elites? At the beginning of this video, I asked you to imagine what it would look like if 2.4 million people lost their jobs tomorrow. Well, you won't have to imagine this for very long. This is happening right now, and we need to stop it. I'm going to keep fighting in Parliament for those 2.4 million jobs and their families. But I need you to share this video with your friends and your family to let them know what a just transition means for them and for all of us. And as always, thank you for watching.